Minister is now trying to sell Canadians on the idea that no new deal with the United States is the best trade deal in the world.
Canada. Ever feel like it's been living in America's shadow for too long? That shadow is finally shrinking. Mark Carney was right all along. Canada is no longer dependent on Trump's America, and the way this story has unfolded feels less like a quiet policy adjustment and more like a political drama with global consequences. Let's break down exactly how it happened. Canada, for decades, relied heavily on the U.S. market, from lumber and oil to autos and dairy. Canadian exports crossed the southern border, and that dependence meant Washington's mood swings, especially under Donald Trump, could jolt Canada's entire economy overnight. But 2025 brought something different. Carney, the former Bank of England governor turned Canadian Prime Minister, warned that over-reliance on America was not just risky, it was dangerous. His message was clear: Canada must diversify, or it will forever be hostage to U.S. politics.
We're matching what the United States has done, what the president has done. We have the best deal of any country with the United States right now.
The timeline speaks volumes. In February 2025, Trump reignited a tariff war, slapping duties of 25% on Canadian goods and 10% specifically targeting Canadian energy exports. His administration framed it as protecting American jobs, but the reality was a shockwave through Canada's economy. Within weeks, Ottawa responded with $21 billion worth of counter tariffs on U.S. products, ranging from ketchup and orange juice to industrial steel. Markets wobbled, Canadian companies froze investments, and consumers felt the squeeze as prices spiked. The image of Canada as a stable but dependent economy began to crack.
We needed to act to fix our economy. We needed to act to fight the Americans. We needed to act to deal with Donald Trump's tariffs.
By spring 2025, anger turned to politics. Carney ran his campaign on a bold message: the old relationship with the United States is over. He promised to lift Canada out of America's shadow, to look not only to the South, but to Europe, Asia, and the global South. Canadians listened. In April's election, they voted him into office, handing the Liberals a minority government. It wasn't just a political victory, it was a mandate for change. Carney had the green light to redraw the map of Canada's economic future, and change came quickly. By August 22, 2025, Carney announced the removal of many of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods under the USMCA framework.
I'm announcing today that the Canadian government will now match the United States by removing all of Canada's tariffs on U.S. goods specifically covered under CUSMA.
But it wasn't a full rollback. Strategic sectors, steel, aluminum, autos, remained shielded. Canada was sending a signal: we'll ease tensions, but we won't be bullied into full compliance. That same week, Carney was already in Europe, negotiating Arctic defense pacts with Sweden and Finland, talking energy with Germany, and exploring military technology like Saab's Gripen fighter jets. This was Canada hedging its bets, diversifying not just economically, but militarily and diplomatically.
Officials say we can expect some defense spending announcements, while the Prime Minister said before leaving he wants to deepen connections with our allies here in Europe.
Why did this shift happen? Simple: survival. For too long, Canada's prosperity was tied to the whims of Washington. When the U.S. sneezed, Canada caught a cold. In 1988, 75% of Canadian exports went south. By 2025, it was even higher, around 80%. Compare that to the United States, where trade makes up barely 3% of GDP. The imbalance was obvious. Canada had more to lose every time the U.S. flexed tariffs or threatened blockades. Carney and his allies understood this imbalance couldn't continue without putting Canada at permanent risk. The impacts were immediate. Some were painful. Industries dependent on U.S. markets struggled, supply chains were scrambled, and certain exports faced bottlenecks. But the opportunities were equally striking. Europe and Canada deepened trade through the CETA agreement, once seen as secondary but now actively pursued. Energy and critical minerals became bargaining chips with Germany and France. New Arctic routes, once symbolic, turned into leverage in Canada's hand as climate change opened shipping lanes and resource opportunities. Public sentiment backed Carney. In February 2025 polls, over 91% of Canadians said they wanted reduced reliance on the the U.S. economy. National pride surged. Fans booed the U.S. anthem at hockey games. Buy Canadian campaigns went mainstream. Hats and shirts declaring "Canada is not for sale" popped up across Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. Even tourism shifted, with Canadians boycotting U.S. travel destinations. This wasn't just economic strategy, it was cultural resistance. A new identity was forming, one that said Canada's destiny would not be dictated from the White House. Interesting details emerged along the way. Provinces began breaking down long-standing interprovincial trade barriers, creating a freer domestic market. What had once been a Canadian Achilles heel, internal division, was being addressed with urgency. On the global stage, smaller countries watched with interest. If Canada could stand up to America, maybe they could too. Analysts in Europe called it a blueprint for resilience. Business Insider even reported that Trump's tariffs, intended to punish, might actually push Canada toward long-term economic independence, a backfire that could haunt U.S. strategy for decades. Still, challenges remain. The auto sector is deeply tied to U.S. supply chains, and complete decoupling is unrealistic. Steel and aluminum remain contentious. Energy exports still flow south in massive volumes. Carney knows Canada can't sever ties completely. The goal isn't independence in the absolute sense, it's resilience. It's having enough diversified trade, strong enough internal markets, and wide enough global partnerships that no single American decision can cripple Canada overnight.
Fast forward to now. August is ending, tariffs are selectively removed, and Carney is flying to Europe again. Deals on clean energy, minerals, and Arctic security are on the table. At home, interprovincial reforms are beginning to bear fruit. It's not easy, and it won't be instant, but the shift is visible. Canada is walking a new path, one less reliant on Trump's America. The future? Expect more deals with Asia, especially India and Japan, who are eager to reduce Chinese and U.S. dominance by building ties with Canada. Latin America is another frontier, with Brazil signaling interest in agricultural and energy exchanges. Domestically, Canada's investment in Arctic infrastructure and green technology could create a new backbone of industries independent of U.S. approval. Yet, the U.S. will still remain Canada's largest partner for years to come. The difference is psychological and strategic. Canada is no longer afraid to say no. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a Canada that is stronger, prouder, and more determined than it's been in decades. Carney was right all along. Dependence on Trump's America was a trap. By facing the crisis head-on, Canada is now setting itself up for resilience in a turbulent world. It's a gamble, yes, but it's also a chance at sovereignty in the truest sense. And now the question is yours. Do you believe this pivot will last? Or will old habits pull Canada back into the U.S. orbit? Let me know in the comments. And if you've made it this far, smash that subscribe, drop a like, and keep watching, because the story of Canada's independence is just beginning. Stay sharp and stay tuned.